welcome to Hello, welcome to another episode of Don't Whistle Night podcast. We're broadcasting live here on 107.7 FM out of beautiful New Orleans. And I am your host, Don Yazzie, and my co-host, Darren Yazzie. I'll be bringing on pretty shortly. And today we have a guest of honor is Avery Tafoya out of Jicarilla Apache Nation. He's not only a member of the Apache Nation, he's also a tribal council member, in the seat, former police officer, firefighter. And without further ado, let me bring you guys on. There's Darren and Avery. How's it going, guys? How's it going?
It's going good. Yourself?
No, not too bad. How about you, Darren? How are you?
No, it's good. The day's here and the hour's nigh, man. Let's get this going.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Avery.
I'm here.
Yes, sir. This is your episode, and we're gonna turn this episode to we're gonna turn the mic on to you now. Hey, Audacious Amber. Go ahead, Avery. Tell us about yourself, where you come from, for our audience listening here.
Oh, I'm Avery Tafoya. I come from Dulce, New Mexico. That's in the northern part of New Mexico by the Colorado border. Currently, I'm a councilman for our Jicarilla Apache Nation. Past jobs are police officer, EMS, and what else did I say I was?
Professional tickle fighter.
Yeah, that too. And, I've done a lot of work for, like the DPS programs, firefighter, EMS, police officer, currently a councilman, used to be a bartender, surveillance. The list goes on.
Oh, awesome. And
awesome.
I've actually been doing the cryptid investigation since 2013.
2013. Wow. And what led you to go down this path of cryptozoology, if you will?
Well, I actually didn't really start till 2013. I had a coworker who asked me to go out squatching one night, and I was like, you know what? That sounds like fun. Let's check it out. So actually, we did. He had went out the night before, I believe, or 2 nights before, and they had heard or seen something actually running up the hill with infrared. So we went to that area. We didn't see nothing. We went to a different area, and it's out by a river that we have on the backside of Dulce, and we actually could smell, that pungent smell everybody describes it, and it was pretty strong. We sat there probably for about an hour before we actually got any action, but we could smell it pretty strong. And, the smell was so strong, my friend actually started getting a headache from it. And the stronger it got, the more freaked out he was getting. And to me, I was new, so I wasn't really expecting or didn't know what to expect, I should say. And as soon as his headache started kicking in, I started getting one. And he's like, well, you know what? Maybe we ought to leave this area. And I told him, we're good until we hear something cross the river. And I said, then I think we could get paranoid and jump in the ride and cut out. But actually, we didn't hear nothing cross the river, but we could hear something moving around behind us. And it's just one of those things where we didn't actually see it, but we could smell something and something walking around behind us. So we stayed there, and eventually we heard something to our right of the vehicle, probably about 10, 15 feet. You could hear the bushes, the weeds crunching and whatnot. And that was kind of like the signal to jump in the ride and cut out. So, and we did. We left the area. The next day, I went back in the morning, and it's one of those where you kind of just get up, drink a cup of coffee, and cut out to go check out what freaked you out the night before. So halfway down to that area, I realized I didn't have my phone camera, of course, and I debated, should I turn around and go home and get it or keep going? And I was already halfway there. So I just continued and went to the area, parked in the same spot, looked around, and I actually found about a 17-inch footprint in the weeds where it had been matted down, and a partial second foot track. I looked along the river bank. I couldn't find nothing. After about a good 20 minutes or so, I got back to my truck, and it was a crew cab with 4 doors. I had my driver's side door open, and I was thinking, whatever we saw probably still in the area. So I honked my truck horn twice. I looked up on the hillside, about 150 yards. I see this black figure looking at me from behind a big pine tree. And I basically could see half of it, half his body.
Mm.
And I was like, whoa, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? And mind you, I was kind of half asleep still. So I took my glasses off. I rubbed my eyes, put them back on. I looked up, and he was still standing there looking at me. Um, I would say we actually did make eye contact, and it seemed like 5 minutes. In reality, it was just probably 20 seconds, 30 seconds. And I realized I had binoculars in my back seat, so I opened my back door, grabbed the binoculars, and I was facing the hillside with the sun behind the hill. So I think what happened was the reflection off the window shined on its face and kind of freaked it out. And by the time I put my binoculars up to look at it, all I saw was it faded back into the bushes, and all I see is the bushes moving. And I was like, wow, I can't believe I saw this creature. And I drove home. I got home. My significant other at the time was at home, and I come barging in, literally talking nonsense, all hyped up and trying to explain what I saw. And she's like, calm down, calm down. Here's some coffee, take a shot, and regroup and slow down and tell me. So I went through the process, and I told her. But since that time, I go out and basically go hiking. I wouldn't necessarily call it squatching, because I think, I believe anyway, that if they want you to see them, they'll show themselves. So a lot of times I go hiking and just look around for evidence, look around for nests, look around for tree breaks and all that stuff. And but when I think back about it, I've actually had about 3 sightings prior to that one. One when we were young kids, we were having a coming of age feast for one of my cousins out in the woods,
Mhm.
and we were out playing in the hillside a ways from the camp, and we seen this somebody walk around like the side of the hill and into the bushes, and all we could see was like the shoulders up, black, and we just figured he was one of the uncles, maybe getting bushes or wood or something. So we kind of left it at that. We got back
Mhm.
to the camp, and we asked, the grandmas and them, well, who's back on the backside of the hill? And they told us there's nobody back there. Everybody's down at the fire at the camp doing their work and all that. So we didn't pay too much attention to it at that time. We were young. Uh, the thought of a hairy creature out in the woods was beyond our thinking at that time. And then the second one was when I was a little older. We were driving down the river where I seen the Sasquatch peeking at me, and this it ran across the road in front of us. It was nighttime, so we stopped actually, and not really thinking that's what we saw. We just figured it was somebody that ran across the road, but at the same time, I'm thinking, well, who's going to be out running around in the woods at this time of the night? And there was an old road that went up the hill. Um, the road went up maybe about 50 yards. It came to a flat area, and then it went up another probably 80 yards over the hill. So me and my cousin get off the ride and run up about halfway to the first little platform, and this whatever we thought it was, a person was already going over the hill. So we get to the flat part. Of course, we're already winded and tired, and we're thinking, well, that don't know what that was. But later on, I was thinking about it, and it was probably a juvenile Bigfoot, because it was by itself. We didn't hear nothing, see nothing after that. And then I think the third one I saw was coming into Dulce. It's maybe about a mile out of town. I seen something sitting on the hillside. And at first, I thought it was like a stump or like a tree. But I come to realize that in that area, there is no stump or tree in that area. And I kind of just blew it off. I didn't think nothing of it. But I've seen probably the same creature twice after that, and actually in the same area. It was like a, excuse me, like a brownish color, but the hair was like dreads, like knotted. And the second time I seen it, it was a little lower on the hill, but it was raining and it was like evening, getting dark, and it was sitting like down on, not on its butt, but like on its feet, but all scrunched together. So I'm driving, I look at the hill and I see this, and I'm like, wow, that's not supposed to be there. I drive down the road, turn around, come back, and I pull into that. There was like a road that went to a house, and it stayed right there, and it was motionless. It didn't move, but it was too dark to take a picture by then. So I left it, and I thought, well, I'll come check it in the morning. I went back there again, and that where it was sitting, it was gone. There was no tree, no stump, no nothing. Uh, and then I seen it the third time, but it was higher up on the hill. So after that, I'm like, it intrigued me enough to start going out. And when you first start doing this stuff, you go through the motions of doing the calls, and then the tree knocks, and whatever else you do. But like now, I don't really go out and yell around at the top of my lungs like I used to. Well, because for one, by the time I do it once, I'm coughing and lung up. So, but it's just more so like doing tree knocks, and when you do the calls or the yells, I always get that. Well, what are you going to do if it answers and it comes running back to you? What are you going to do? I don't know. Hopefully, take a picture of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so since then, I go out. People will see them, and they let me know, and then I'll go out and look around and investigate. Um, but sometimes, when people report these, it's a month old or a week old, or they've gone and looked in that area and they walked all over whatever evidence might be there. So it's just kind of like a cat and mouse chase, I guess. You're lucky to get a fresh sighting like overnight or 24 hours versus 30 days later when all your evidence is either washed out or walked on. So, but then that's pretty much how I started. It's interesting enough, and plus, good exercise out hiking the woods. So
Yes. That's pretty interesting. Darren, do you have any questions?
Oh yes, just like I was saying earlier, I just recently added you on social media. Is this the event that you guys were chasing around? You and another man? in the mountains
Yeah,
right there.
I, actually, about a
Or
month ago was the latest
oh,
one.
oh,
Uh,
okay.
my brother,
Mm.
my son's friend was out, and he saw what he described as a reddish colored one,
Hmm.
probably about 60 yards. He was up on top of a hill looking down, and it came out of the bushes. They saw each other, and it walked away. You know, your typical Sasquatch. You know, once they see
Mm.
you, you make eye contact. Normally, they'll just walk off right
Right.
away,
They'll
and
Yes,
that's
yes.
what it did.
Mhm.
And also, even on your media, you said you had lights, seen UFOs and stuff
Oh
out there
yeah,
in
yeah.
Dulce.
About
Yeah.
2 weeks
Well,
ago.
Hey,
Yeah, I
Avery.
was. Yeah.
Avery, real quick, can you tell the audience that your location, where you're located at, and where all this high strangeness is taking place on Jicarilla Nation, for the
Oh
people that
yeah.
don't know?
The Hickory Reservation is located in the northern part of New Mexico. We're like a mile or so from the Colorado border in north central New Mexico, and we got something like 890 something acres, 1,000 acres. So it's a pretty big reservation.
Mm, it is. There's a lot of rumors of an underground base over there.
yeah,
What can you tell
yeah,
us about that? The Dulce underground bases,
Yeah, well, that's back behind Dulce, where the river is, and there's
Archuleta Mesa.
Archuleta Mesa is a mountain, and technically the story goes back to, I believe, 1979 when I think his name was Phil Schneider.
yes, yeah. Phil Snyder.
Supposedly, and I say supposedly because there's different stories circulating that he might have not happened, but he was a contractor and ended up inside the base, and apparently there was a some outbreak, some fighting, the aliens and the military, and I could never prove that it happened. But the funny thing is, at that time, my father was the police chief in Dulce,
Hmm.
and it's too bad he passed away before I could put that
Hmm.
spotlight on him and grill him. Hey, what happened? But
Yeah.
I uh, I didn't really know about it till after a while when I got older and looked into it. And yeah, they're claiming there's an underground base. It's got 7 levels, and it's a pretty big area. And actually, the funny thing about this, and it kind of lends some truth to it, is when I was a police officer in our coffee room, there was a closet that they would put files in. And one night there was a few of us that worked graveyard, and one of the other officers kind of went into this room and was kind of looking through the files, and he pulls out this file, and they actually had pictures of the supposed underground base, but more so like drawings. They had those I forget what they come. They're like vast tubes or something, about 7 feet, and there was actually creatures with all kind of hook up stuff to
Oh,
it.
Yeah. All kinds of
And
crazy things
I
going.
actually got that paper at my house somewhere. But actually, we kind of looked at it, and once we kind of realized, maybe we shouldn't be looking at this, we put it back and closed it and left it alone. But yeah, there's a lot of people see a lot of strange stuff up on that Archuleta Mesa. Of course, there's a lot of military people, also soldiers. Actually, I had a friend tell me that there's actually 2 ways you can go up to that mountain. One is pretty much straight up on the Hickory side, and then another way, excuse me, through the Hickory, but you got to go on the backside through Southern Ute Reservation on the Colorado side. So my friend was telling me that they were up there kind of hiking and looking around, and out of nowhere, these military come out with uh, their M16s or whatever they carry and told them, you guys need to get out of this area. And I was like, whoa, that
Hmm.
how can you have military up on the hill and not even know or see them or anything of that sort? But they complied. They got off the mountain. But I've heard that there is an opening to the west about 2 miles. That's the I'm still currently trying to find. And then I heard there was a like a tunnel of some sort up on top. And I don't know if that's on the southern Ute side. So if I do go up looking, I have to put the camels on and sneak around, and but otherwise I'd probably get arrested from the southern Ute tribe. But
Mhm.
it's an ongoing thing, and supposedly a stealth plane crashed up on the mountain back in sometime in the early '80s. Uh, the state police officer at the time was used to work with my father, and he was actually telling us about it. And this other individual that I go squatching with, his name's Hoyt Velarde. He also had mentioned that they actually walked up on that stealth plane that had crashed. But we hear stories about military up there, and they actually, I think, graded a road somewhere up on that mountain somewhere to get that craft out. But the people that they asked to do the grading with the blades and the bulldozers, they told them you can't say nothing. And of course, you know how like the military, the older guys or like the astronauts, they tell them they can't talk about it.
Mhm.
And until a lot of them do when they're on their deathbed or getting
Yeah.
older. Uh, this one gentleman was actually saying, "Yeah, we actually did blade a road up there to get for them to get that craft, but they told us that we couldn't say anything." Of course, he was pretty close to passing on, so that's why he was kind of telling some stories about it. Uh,
Mm.
we used to have one of those Kwanzaa huts almost smack in the middle of town, and they actually were saying that they brought an alien down into that little hut,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that there was like a green light that was shining out from the inside out, and actually a few people actually got to peek in, but they too were threatened and said, you guys can't say nothing. But that
Wow.
Kwanzaa hut building's no longer there, so it's a
Wow.
lot of strangeness. And we get a lot of black helicopters, um, airplanes that fly pretty low, but it's more so the black helicopters. They're not no numbers, no decals, no nothing. But yeah, that's our UFO underground UFO base in our backyard.
Wow.
That's pretty much
Well,
what
I
it's
had a
no.
hold on, sorry. Yeah, we had a question here from one of our audiences right here. So I worked on the res. Could he explain when stuff goes on or happens, how it kind of doesn't get reported or just goes away? Like, like there's a lot of things that go on the reservations. I'm sure it happens on your reservation too, where there's a lot of hush hush. There's a lot of things that don't get reported. And one of the things I say to people on the reservation is get one of those. Remember one of those scanners? You can hear what goes on, the chatter.
Yeah,
Yeah, my friend had one, and he listened down to many times where Navajo PD were chasing Sasquatch.
Yeah,
So
we get that too out there in Pine Hill. Like lock your doors. The PDs seems like they're chasing the skinwalker around the school. Like oh shit. Okay,
yeah,
well I'm gonna head out there and see what's up.
yeah. So what can you tell us about that, Avery? What
probably the same boat. I'm gonna say every other person has a scanner, so anytime anything goes on, they hear it, and sometimes they'll call me or text me, and if you hear that on the scanner, they're chasing something, or there's something weird lights down the river and stuff like that. So it's you go up to Dulce and kind of you can ask anybody, and most likely you'll get a story of some sort, whether it's UFO, Sasquatch, military. It's everybody has a story pretty much in Dulce.
It's a lot of
Even as far as like we were talking uh, when we first got in touch, like about the goat man. They've
oh yeah,
also
that's what I was gonna
Mm.
ask.
I've
Mm.
also heard of them seeing gargoyles.
Oh
I've
yes,
actually heard two
yeah.
stories. Actually.
Really, really. What can you tell us about that story and the goat man story, if you don't mind? It really interests me.
The gargoyle one, actually, when I was working graveyard with this other officer, I uh, I had went to go do a highway check, so he was in town, and he was patrolling town, and he came over this hill where our football field is, and our football field sits like in a little bow. It's all hills all around it, so you have to come over the hill and then drive down on the side of the road. But anyway, he had just come over the top and was coming down, and he sees something run and then fly off, and he said he seen the
Mm.
tail and the wings, and
Oh,
it freaked him out, And I was actually coming back to town, and he calls me on the radio. He goes, can we meet over by the store? I need to talk to you. And I could hear it in his voice that, something happened. So I'm like, yeah, give me a few minutes. I'll be right there. So we met, and then he just sits there, and he had this weird look on his face. And I told him, what's going on, He goes, oh, you're not going to believe what I saw. And I was thinking, okay, what did you see, like a UFO or something? And he goes, no. He goes, he could only describe it as a gargoyle.
wow.
He
Mm.
he saw the tail and the wings, but he didn't see like the face in that. He said it flew off and pretty much just into the night sky. The
Yeah.
second sighting was a lady, and this is pretty close to the football field, so I'm thinking it's probably up on the hillside in on top of the mountain there. But she lives in that area also, and she said one night they were up late, and she hears something out on the porch. So she goes to the window, looks out, and there's this creature sitting on the porch, on the rail,
Oh,
like stretched down. And I guess
Mm.
when she kind of opened the curtain and the light went out, it literally kind of stood up and flew off.
oh
And
snap.
Mm.
she says it freaked her out bad that um, she didn't keep her windows open anymore, her curtains closed, and she was pretty scared. Just her telling the story, you could hear her voice trembling.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, and it's
That's crazy.
I haven't seen that yet, but when you hear stories like that, it kind of makes you wonder, like, wow, you guys sure you ain't on drugs or partying it or something,
Yeah.
which they weren't. So, but yeah, it's just we hear stories like that also.
Hmm. Wow. Hey, Darren, you
Yeah.
had a question?
Oh yes. At least these gargoyles. Yeah. I remember a couple of months ago I was doing a thing on vampires in Albuquerque, and I posted that up. And if anybody knew any more information about vampires in Albuquerque, and what I got was actually gargoyles. I got more gargoyles stories out
Albuquerque.
there. Yeah, in Albuquerque on the
Wow.
military base out there. So
Mm.
maybe
Wow.
militaries, maybe shoot, maybe they're hiding gargoyles. Who knows, man? Like this whole
Wow.
military Dulce base. They have what I just did a quick search on it. Everything from gray aliens, reptilians. Even that guy Phil Schneider said he
Yeah.
got shot with some type of alien weapon, lost his fingers.
Mhm.
Costello, a whistleblower,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all they all have stories to tell about this area. Even a local PD, I think his name was man, what's his name? Paul something, but he was a PD. He did Mila. He was actually one of the first ones to call it out with cattle mutilations and stuff like that. And all these people out here in this base, they all kind of get written off as loony, at the end.
Yeah.
So that just leads so much more to this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Conspiracy theorists and all these things, it's everything from deep tunnels from Dulce, the Roswell to Area 51. That's what I think that's what that Phil Schneider guy was doing, was
Mhm.
railway systems and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
and to stir the pot, you know what I mean, on that one,
mm,
one of my great friends, she's on here, Audacious Amber, she's a fellow podcaster. She sent me a video of a podcast episode back in 2013 where the government had a secret program where they're cloning human DNA and animal
yeah,
DNA and
mm,
releasing them on Native American reservations such as Dulce and Navajo nations, just can of worms after a can of worms, and I
yep,
think the best thing we can do is talk about it and see if we can capture any evidence, cold hard evidence.
yep,
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
mm,
And if you can prove a lot of things, and I'm pretty sure they can find a way to make you disappear. Yeah.
or make you disappear. You know.
Yeah,
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 yep.
make you disappear. Yeah. And another thing, Goat Man. What can you tell us any stories about the goat? I ran into the Goat Man myself, so I'm really interested in the Goat Man.
Before I get to the goat man, on the Archuleta and the supposed underground base, they're saying there's 7 layers, 7 floors,
Yeah.
7 layers.
and of course, I think it's the fifth or sixth floors where they're doing the genetics thing, making the creatures uh, hybrids with the humans and reptilians and all that stuff. Uh, I had a friend show me a picture where they were halfway up Archuleta Mesa. They were parked, and I believe he said it was like 3 in the morning, and they could hear something behind a tree moving around. And he turned on his lights, and he had his camera ready, his phone, and he took a picture. And what you can see is like a greenish colored leg uh, at the bottom of the tree, like it's like standing, like trying to peek out of the behind the tree. Like, and it's weird because it kind of looks like a lizard type leg.
Oh, yeah.
I've
Mm,
been trying to get him to send me that picture, to show, but I lose him time to time, and then I meet him again, and then we start talking about it. And okay, I'll send it to you. But that's one of probably the most intriguing photos I've seen, and that kind of ties into the underground base. It's what else could it be? It's either that or a reptilian.
mm,
So he said once they saw that, they pretty much got scared and drove down the road and kind of left it be. Um, Sometimes I ask them if they can take me to these areas, but a lot of them don't want to go back,
Hmm.
and that's
uh,
understandable.
Hey, Darren, you got a question?
yes. Have you ever tried looking on like Google Maps and just scouting this area, or is this area just like totally
Google Earth might be
blocked
better.
off? Yeah, like
No, it's not blocked off, but I never have. It's something that I want to do. Actually, back in 2020, I did some filming with Ben Henson from UFO Witness,
mm,
and we went up. We tried to go up on top of the mountain, but it was kind of during the winter time, and the roads were real bad. So we only got halfway up and got stuck. But we were. using a infrared on his phone, his camera, and we could actually see like a heat source, hot air coming out of the mountain in one area. Uh,
Hmm. Events,
and
huh?
it, yeah, and he put it actually. It's toward the end of that episode, but it's something that I know where it's at. I just haven't had the time to go up and look in that area. So we're thinking that that was a vent. You know,
Hmm.
it was interesting. It's just something that I need to follow up. Um, and I did put this out on social media when it happened, and actually I've had I think like 10 people message me and tell me you need to be careful. If they know you're up there looking around for that stuff, they'll probably come to pay you a visit. Of course,
Oh
they
yeah.
is the government, so I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I could see them coming a mile away anyway. So, but yeah, it's just stuff like that, and actually, people have claimed to see the front of the mountain open, and UFOs flying into the mountain.
Huh. Huh.
Yeah.
Uh, and this goes back to probably the early '70s.
Hmm.
Uh, or more recently, my daughter said she's seen a craft go into the mountain, which I don't doubt.
Jeez. Yeah.
They actually pulled off the road and watched it, and she actually drew a picture of it. So it's like something's going on up there.
Hmm. Another thing, yeah, I want to bring up. I seen on your social media you had a picture of a portal open up in the sky. I seen a portal myself, and first time I ever seen someone post it, it was you. I was like, oh my gosh, I got the chills, and I was really excited.
Wasn't
Tell us
that an
about that.
awesome picture? That was an awesome
Yeah,
picture.
it was.
Um,
It was. Yeah.
and of all places,
Hmm.
that was in Albuquerque. You know, um,
Huh.
I had walked from the hotel to this convenience store just 50 yards away, and I come walking out, and I looked up, and I was like, "Whoa, what the heck is that?" And it was cloudy. It was dark, and just that area, a perfect square, and it was just like that
Yeah.
can't be the weather. It can't be, the air inversions or something. It was just mind blowing, and I just wish I had a better camera to take a better picture of it. But yeah, that was. I don't see how people could not see that. It was just plain as day right there, and
Mhm.
it was open. I would say maybe 3 minutes at the most. But yeah, I
Hmm.
was trying to. I just stood there looking at it. I was hoping to see something come out or go in or something, but it was just. I think it was like 9 in the evening when I saw that,
The Wild Night in the Evening. Okay, that's
and
pretty cool. I seen. Oh yeah, go ahead.
that,
Sorry.
it was just awesome though. I never seen that in a city like that. You
Yeah,
get used to seeing those things out in the middle of nowhere, but yeah, that was I had to take a picture of that one.
that was good
Hmm.
capture. Good capture. And can you tell us about your first time seeing a ET being, alien creature?
Yeah, when I was about 5 years old, this was in July. Um, During July, we have a celebration in Dulce. It's called Little Beaver, and it's like the third weekend. Uh, it's a celebration, parade, powwow, rodeo, softball, all that good stuff.
Hmm.
Anyway, I was at home, and my brothers were outside in the back playing with the neighbors, and I think actually I was sleeping, and I was sleeping in the living room, and I woke up. I had to go use the restroom, and there was nobody inside. I was the only one inside, so I get up and I walk down from our living room down the hallway to the restroom. There's a room right at the beginning of the hallway to the right, and then the restroom, and then two more rooms were down at the end of the hallway. So I walk by the first door and I see something, uh, and I didn't think too much of it. I actually got to the bathroom door and I thought, Okay, well, who's inside with me? I walk back to that door and I see this being standing in the room. It was like a light bluish color. The skin or the facial features were like a light blue, kind of like a light blue glow.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
of course, I'm only 5 years old, so I'm what under 3 feet or somewhere around there. And this creature alien was probably maybe 4 feet, I would say, because I was kind of actually looking up at it. Um, Needless to say, when I realized that it wasn't nobody from the house, family members, and of course, none of us looked like that. I freaked out. I screamed at the top of my lungs and went running out of the house. And instead of running out to the back where my brothers were, I ran out the front door. We had a fence around the house, probably about maybe 20 feet from the front door to the fence. Screen door. So I go busting out, screaming my head off. And I don't know, it's weird because I ran back inside for some reason. And I did this all before the screen door could close. So I run all the way out to the fence and then I run back inside. I went back inside and I went back to the room and looked again and it was still there. Um,
Huh.
I actually don't know what it was doing in the room, but the second time when I ran back and looked at it, there was actually a pod inside the room, just as big as the room, ceiling wise anyway. I don't think it was touching the ceiling. It was more like maybe 5 feet. I would estimate maybe like a 5 foot pod. Um, the being itself didn't have digits like us. It was more like a mitten that I could see. I couldn't see fingers, but I could see what possibly was a thumb, and then you know, no digits,
Hmm.
just kind of like that. It had a like a one piece suit on of some sort and a insignia on the chest. It wasn't your typical alien with the almond shaped big black eyes. It was, I guess all I could say is uh, it didn't have those big black eyes. It was a different alien, and it had a
Different.
little
Yeah.
slit for a mouth, and then the nose I couldn't really make out. But I've always wanted to get a regression hypnotist, and go that route to see
Oh
what I
man.
saw.
Wow.
Um, and then I
I think
go ahead.
I think if you do, hit us up. Maybe we can do a live thing on that because what aliens, man, it's totally unbelievable. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. Like this whole Dulce. This is just a wide town event. Like everybody knows about it, but no one says nothing about it. It's crazy. It's unbelievable. Wow.
Yeah, and of
Uh,
course, when you talk about these things, you're going to be labeled crazy or, but I don't have a
yeah,
problem with
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well,
anyway, the,
not
after
here,
after
not here.
after me looking at it the second time, I ran out again, screaming my head out, and by then I ran to the fence again, and I could see my mom and them. They obviously heard me screaming my head off, and I kind of glanced and looked down the road, and they're running toward the house. So I stand there, and I'm like in this daze, I guess, and I look up in the sky, and I see that pod shooting up into a ship,
Hmm.
you know, and
Mm.
that's the last I remember. I don't recall going back inside. I don't recall. My
Yes.
mom and my sisters being there. I don't recall my brothers and them running in from the back. So like that whole day,
It's
maybe
crazy.
even to the next day, I don't have no recollection
Ooh.
of what happened. Um, and you know, us as natives, when we see things or stuff happens to us, we go to a shaman or a medicine
Ceremony.
man.
Mhm.
So we went through that process and kind of left it alone. You know, nobody
Mm.
talked about it. My father didn't say nothing about it. My mom didn't say nothing about it. Uh, so it was just kind of tucked away till I got older. When I was older and started having this like fascination with UFOs and aliens and whatnot, I started looking into it. And the weird thing about this, seeing this alien on this day is uh, July 19th, I believe it was. And that's the day that we landed on the moon
Wow.
Huh.
That's crazy.
in 1969.
Mhm.
Uh, when I got older, like I said, when I was a teenager in high school, I started looking up this stuff. And that's how I put that date with the moon landing, you know. And then again, everybody questioned, was the moon landing for real, you know? Only the astronauts know that, really. But it coincides with the date that we supposedly landed on the moon.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
as I got older, like in my 20s and whatnot, I actually asked my dad one time, you know, I think we were driving to Albuquerque and then just out of the blue, I'm like, you know what, Dad, I got a question for you. And he goes, okay, you know. So I asked him, I said, when I was small, what did I see? Did I really see or saw what I saw? He didn't answer me right away. He drove for about 5 minutes, and his only response was, the medicine man said, whatever you saw was not of this earth. And that was it, you know.
Wow.
In our cultures, in our traditions, you don't second guess the
Yeah.
medicine man, the shaman.
Mm.
What he says is the word, you know.
Mhm.
So that's all he said. No explanation after that. No
That's it.
conversation after that about it. So I sat there like, wow, okay. And then that's when I started thinking about the hypnotism thingy, you know, get hypnotized and see what I really saw.
Mhm.
I'm going to say maybe 5 years later, I actually was giving my mom a ride and I asked her about it and she got upset. Her whole demeanor, she got mad. She goes, you need to talk to your father about that. And that's all she said, you know. And I'm like, well, I really talked to him, and he told me so. But yeah, it's just one of those thingies, and I never really told that story to
Mm.
to anybody for the longest time. And in Dulce, we have a conference, UFO Bigfoot Sasquatch conference, and my brother Alan was the MC. And they had different people lined up to come and talk, and so he called me one morning, or no, the night before. It was a Saturday. I guess the the first presenter guy didn't make it, so he calls me up and he tells me, "Do you think you can come talk at the conference and tell your story?" And I'm like, "Wow." I told him, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I'm in a bind because this person didn't show up, and we need to fill that time slot." And I said, "What time?" You know, he goes, "Oh, at 8:15." And of course, it had to be the first early one. So I said, "Yeah, sure." And I was reluctant to tell the story because I never told anybody. So
Oh, well.
supposed to I was supposed to fill in 40 minutes. It went to an hour and a half, and
Hey.
you know, everybody was just blown away. Everybody was literally sitting there with their mouths open, like, "Wow," you know. And it took me back, and I
So,
actually had to kind of step away to regroup and think. You know, I'm one of those too that kind of uses humor to
Oh yeah.
readjust, because
Yes.
your mind is
Mm.
way out there and you got to bring yourself back somehow. But I
Hmm.
actually had a few people come up to me after that crying and saying, wow, thank you for sharing. And they start telling the story. And I'm like, wow, that was amazing.
It is.
And not to get mocked or made fun of or anything, everybody was just, the room was just dead silent. Everybody was just
Mhm.
glued and listening. So after that, they were asking if I could make a video and put it on YouTube and whatnot at that time. But I said, well, you should have been at the conference to hear the story.
Hey Darren, you have a question you want to ask
Uh,
Avery?
yes. Do the Apaches have a name for aliens, or do they have a name for a Bigfoot that your tribe would call
We do, but I can't pronounce it. I'm not
them?
fluent as I should be.
Mm,
Of course, growing up off the res, I didn't have the grandparents to teach me the language, which
uh,
I'm trying to learn now, which is a little harder as you get older. You can't pick up, but yeah, we do, and I can't remember, and I don't want to attempt to say it because I'm saying
It's all
something that
uh,
good.
I'm not supposed
It's
to
all
say.
good. I have a picture I want to show you, show the audience right here. This what can you tell us about this picture right here, Avery?
Okay, this particular picture, we were out getting wood one day, um, and I came across like a little structure, like a kind of like a tripod type structure. There was like four good sized poles, I guess you could say, leaning on each other's,
Mm,
broken. Nothing was tied onto it. Nothing was holding it. It was just there. So I thought, this is weird. This is a structure. So
mm.
we went home and we went out to the same place the next day. So I thought, you know what? Let me leave a banana and let me
Good.
see what happens if it gets munched on or if anything bothers it. And if you look at the picture, you can see there's teeth marks on it,
yeah.
Big block
Yes,
teeth.
yeah, I was just gonna say that too.
and
Hmm.
it's like our buck teeth, that we
Oh
have
yeah.
as humans. I'll just say buck teeth. Uh, be, I mean, it's not a bear, obviously, because they don't have those type of teeth. Deer, I don't think would touch it, but it's just weird because I think I put it on that structure on that, and then when we came back, it was on the ground. And that's
Hmm.
the first thing I noticed. I said, wow, look at something like scraped it with its teeth. And it pretty much went the length of the banana. And I took it
Big
home
mouth.
and
Hmm.
I put it in my freezer to keep it. And it unfortunately got thrown out.
Of course, of course. And
Of
on
course,
this
I
one
didn't
right
do
here,
it. But yeah,
yeah,
that's where that one comes from, that which is
awesome.
unusual.
And then this one right here looks like we got a back of a some kind of creature with some hair right there, huh?
Yeah, this is out by our ranch. We have a ranch about 12 miles out of town, and I had put up a trail cam on a trail. I usually when I put cameras out, I put them either 6 feet or higher, and this was facing a trail where it forked, and it picked that picture up. And at the time I put the cameras up, there was no cattle in that area.
Hmm.
Uh, so when I went back and got my camera, all I found was elk tracks, but I don't know. That could be a squatch on all fours, but whatever it is, it had to be high because the camera was at 6 feet.
Hmm. And this one right here, this one is pretty interesting picture right here. This dark figure.
Yeah, that's on the southern part of our reservation. We have a little place where there's some houses and like a maintenance garage, probably about 50 miles out of town. And
Hmm.
this officer lived down there, and she was telling me we keep hearing something yelling. and something's driving the dogs crazy, and she kind of kept going on. We could smell the smell, so I went down and I put cameras up. There's a hill behind their house, probably about a quarter of a mile, maybe a little longer. So I put one camera on one end and the other camera on the other end, and the trail just pretty much goes on top of the hill. I actually I had a break at work, so I zoomed down to get these cameras on my lunch break, and then I had to zip back to town. So I actually passed my camera, I think twice. I couldn't see it, and I was in a hurry. I found the first one right away, and then this one, I walked by the camera, as you can see, and it took the picture, and you can see that dark figure sitting in the shade.
Yeah.
I have another
Oh,
picture of the same area, but uh, that figure's not in it. It's I think it was taken earlier in the day.
wow.
So after I found it, and I actually didn't see it per se. I had my glasses on, and they turned dark in the sun, and I was in a hurry, you know, because I only had an hour. So I found it. I took it off the tree, and I left. Once I got back to the office, I had a laptop, and I started looking through it. And I'm like, oh man, I didn't see that, you know. And I went out later on after 5 to that area, and where it's sitting or standing, because the hill in that area dropped. It dropped like a good maybe 2-3 feet. So that's how we got that upper part.
Mhm.
The funny thing is, they had two German Shepherd dogs. When I first went there to put my cameras up, they happily went with me up the hill, running all over, and there was a lot of bear scat, but it was old, a lot of old bear scat up on top. There was nothing fresh. So I think it was when they were hibernating, actually, the bears. So when I went back to get the cameras the second time, the dogs would not go with me up the hill.
For
They
what reason?
they just walked so far from the truck and they stayed, which I thought was a little weird. And I didn't snap about it till I was already up halfway up the hill, and I'm like, "Well, where's the dogs?" You know. I got my cameras and I went back down. When I got back to the truck, they came out and they were all happy, you know. But I was like, wow, you guys didn't go up the hill with me. Did you guys sense that or what? And they were full
Oh
grown
man.
German shepherds, so you know, for them not to go back up on the hill that second time, they probably knew it was up there.
Yeah, they probably did. Well, listen, guys. I wish we had enough time to get into your skinwalker
Mm.
sighting. But we'll save that for another episode.
Sure,
I'm
sure.
gonna I'm gonna be bringing it in right now. Our hour is pretty much up. And is there any final thoughts you want to say, you guys, Darren?
Uh, yes. If you're serious about that, hypnosis or the hypnosis regression therapy or whatever, uh, maybe we could go to GoFundMe, man, because this is something you rarely get to come across. And you know, if I can contribute to that, because UFOs, man, it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
if we
Well,
can do something like that,
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
you guys,
if we can find somebody to do it, sure.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
we'll find somebody.
I'll keep it on. Yeah, for
Alrighty, guys. We got less than a
uh,
minute, so thank you, guys. Thank you, Avery. It's been an honor hearing your stories. We can't wait to have you back, and thank you for tuning in to Don't Whistle at Night podcast. We've been broadcasting live here on United Public Radio and UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM and 107.7 FM from beautiful New Orleans. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you.
all
You
right,
too.
I'll go net. Peace.